I know that you're cleaning stuff. I know you're labeling stuff, including your husband. So I am not going to ask you what you're doing, but I do want to ask, have you discovered anything new about yourself during this downtime? Do you think anything fundamental will change?
For myself personally, I don't think so. Um, in a way that I feel like, without trying to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet, I feel like post mental illness, I feel like I was on this journey or on this path already of understanding life beyond materialism, um, and just wanting to grow and evolve as a person, what my thoughts and beliefs are, standing by that. So I feel like, in that sense, I feel like that journey for me already like began in 2014. And so I'm not really finding this period difficult at all. um, in fact, I think there's a lot of introspection, there's a lot of self-realization that I am actually really enjoying this. I seem to be at peace with whatever is coming our way. I wasn't on a back foot when this sort of lockdown was announced. I didn't go into a frenzy about, oh my God, what are we going to do? Um, how am I going to be, locked up inside my home for like 3 weeks? I don't think any of those things. I think in the way that I received it, I was quite happy with the way I received this information and in the way that I reacted. And um, so yeah, it's so I feel like that journey for me already began. So to what I feel like what we're going through right now is not something that I'm personally, I don't mean it in any other way, in terms of what is going on within our country and globally, and in the way that it's impacting people's lives. But for me personally, but yes, unexpectedly, will I learn something from it? I hope so. I hope, um, I think that's my realization. I think my realization is that I was quite impressed with how I dealt with this whole situation.
Yeah. Yeah. You see what you're made of in a sense, right? Because otherwise there's so many distractions all the time.
Yes, yes, and I do know a lot of people who are finding it difficult to spend time. Of course, there's me and my husband. It's not like I'm alone in the house, but um, a lot of time, a lot of it, even though you have a companion, a lot of it is also having to live within your own mind. It's like you also can't be dependent on each other 24/7. You also have to give space to the other person. You also have to live on your own, in your own head for some time. You need to give the other person space. So um, I feel like that's happening pretty easily. um, and there's a lot of peace, there's a lot of calm, there's no anxiety, there's no fear of what next. Because I think in my world, uh, in my world I feel like I've experienced the worst already in some ways. um, so having been through that and coming out of it, everything else seems like you feel like you're prepared for anything that life throws at you.
Yeah. I was reading an article in Vanity Fair magazine, and it talked about the caption was, perhaps a global pandemic is a time for celebrities to stay quiet. And it said that COVID content, which is what the writer called it, it said COVID content, it just rings as false and distasteful and unaware of the seriousness of the stakes. What is your response to that?
I think it means different things to different people. And I think you've got to separate. I think, first of all, people need to stop thinking of actors as dumb people. There's this thing that, oh, it's all about, vanity and this sort of life. And I'd say majority of us are pretty smart, pretty intelligent. And I think we kind of, we know what is happening. We know, we understand the seriousness of the situation. But I think, like in the movies, there's always several ways of saying the same thing. You can say it in a comic way, you can say it in a direct serious way, you can say it in a roundabout way. I think different people have different ways of receiving information, expressing themselves. And I think there's a lot of people who feel like, yes, we've got the message, we understand the seriousness of it. We are doing everything in our own, within our capacity to stay indoors, to be careful with, social distancing, being responsible towards our nation in terms of what we can give back to the have-nots. Beyond that, I mean, what else are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to, I mean, I don't know. And I think as long as I think everyone who understands empathy, I think most of us do. I think most of us are, I think we all feel empathy. And then as long as you have that core grain or that core ingredient, it doesn't matter whether I put up a post of whatever it might be. So I'm not really sure what this whole conversation is about, to be honest, but I feel like different people have different ways of dealing with it. There's a whole lot of people who don't want to know, it also creates a lot of anxiety for a lot of people, constant information about the pandemic and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And please understand that there are people who live with mental illness on a daily basis, and it could cause, further anxiety. So, they're probably looking for content that kind of helps them get their mind off everything that's going around in the world. So, like I said, I think different people receive things differently, different people react to things differently. And I think as long as you're authentic to who you are in this process, I feel like that's the only way to go about this.
And like, you really went out on a limb with Chapak as an actor, as a producer. We talked about how hard it was, how challenging it was for you to do this role, and you were really good in the film. I mean, at no point did I think you were not the character, which is an amazing accomplishment. Did it break your heart when it didn't perform at the box office?
No, Anu, because I think Meghna and I think always knew that it was a challenging one in many ways. It was not your sort of served on a platter, easy to digest kind of film. I think we knew that right from the start, and I think we were ready for that challenge right from the beginning. And I always say this, for Meghna and I, the measurement of success of this film is not the box office. It is 10 years down the line when you see girls like Lakshmi in the mainstream, in offices, in industries, in the world that we live in. That will be the true success of Chapak. It is not what you see in the box office. I genuinely believe that the success of Chapak is 5-10 years down the line, and I know at that point we will all know that Chapak had a small role to play in that movement.
What did you learn from the experience?
So much. And is it like professional, is it personal? I think I felt like I learned at every level. As a producer, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? What are the kind of films that we want to make? As an actor, I think I was true to where I am in my life, and wanting to push the needle um, at, at so many levels, understanding the life of an acid attack survivor, that you just sort of read about stories like this, but then when you actually live uh, the life of an acid attack survivor, um, the highs and the lows of that life, um, if you don't come out of a character and of a film having evolved as a person and having learned something, then you know you're not doing something
But did it toughen you up, Deepika? Do you feel like you can take on more now?
right. Yeah.
Hannah?
Yeah, I mean, in what way? Yes, of course, and I think I've always been open to that challenge. I don't feel like, um, in fact, I spin it on its head and say I think I've always been ready for that challenge, and that's why when Shapak came to me, I was like, yes, yes, of course, I will do this, and we will do whatever it takes to make this movie. So yeah, I feel like I've always been ready. I've always been up for challenges.
Okay, and we know about Shakun's film, but is there anything else that you're considering, have signed, or in it's brewing as we speak?
Yes, yes. Nothing that I can speak of, but yes, there's certainly stuff that's, that I'm exploring, scripts that I'm reading, meetings that were set up before this happened. So definitely, but I mean, of course, things are going to change now. Dates, I think everybody's date situation is going to sort of um, play out differently in the way that we thought about it maybe a month ago. So it'll be, we'll all have to deal with it when this kind of pans out. But of course, I mean, there is most definitely stuff that I'm looking at apart from Shakun's film. There's The Intern. That's
You announced that, yeah.
yes, and we know who the director is also, but we'll make that announcement. This is not the time to be talking about those things. We'll make that announcement when when we get out of this.
Tell me, did you find the love story that you so badly wanted when we spoke in Cannes last year?
Uh, no.
Believe that. I
No.
can't believe Deepika Padukone cannot find a great love story.
Yeah. But I feel like Intern is the film in that space. I'm not a love story, but it is that really sweet, just that ye jawani-ish, piku-ish, uh, like these genres in my head, but uh, that sort of sweet
Something
feel
joyful.
good, like it has a sweet simple message. It makes you feel good, but it also makes you think a little bit. Maybe just half a tear. It's in that space. I feel like
I love the
is
precision
that.
of that half a tear.
Yeah.
Deepika, I know you announced that you, both you and Ranbir, posted on your social media handles that you've donated to the PM Cares Fund. But this is also a very, very challenging time in terms of mental health, which is a cause very close to your heart. Is the foundation going to be working alongside, for the pandemic in any way?
Yes, we have. In fact, we've been very actively creating awareness about what one can do in this situation for people who live with mental illness. And that's sort of actually um, the next conversation for Ranveer and me to really focus on mental health. And I think that's really important. I feel like it's one of those things that has been um, underrepresented, not enough focus on mental health in a crisis like this. And so it's great that I think everyone's donating to food and the medical fraternity and masks and um, various things, and that's great. But there's also mental illness that's so important, that hasn't been highlighted enough, that hasn't been spoken about enough. And dealing with it in itself is an uphill task. and then to go through something like this makes it even harder. And so you'd probably see me in the next couple of days and weeks actually speaking more about mental health in this time.
Because like you said, the film industry is all going, we're all going through this together.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody will come together and figure out the way forward when hopefully this shall pass soon. Tell me, what is your biggest concern? Because entertainment globally has been hit so badly. It's the first time in the history of cinema that the box office is zero. It's never happened before. As a
Right.
producer, as an artist, what is your biggest concern with this?
To be honest, Anu, I feel like there's no metric for this. There's no sort of any kind of data or information that you can rely on, because I feel like what we're going through has never happened.
Exactly.
So there's no way of saying when we come out of this is how it will pan out, because we've never been, and not just for the film industry, in every single industry. I don't think we, in our generation at least, in our parents' generation, in fact, Ranveer's grandfather, who's 90 or 90 plus, he has never experienced something like this. He's fought wars, he's been a part of the partition, and he's been a part of so much, but he still says this is unprecedented. He's never experienced something like this. So there's nothing to sort of fall back on or lean on and say, okay, we feel like this is what it will open up to be, and this is how we can kind of measure and then course correct. I just guess the millions and millions of rupees that are potentially lost, and anyway, I feel like the filmmaking business is not really a lucrative business in that sense. Most people do it because they're just passionate about telling stories. And in recent times, there is a perception of the millions and the trillions and the 100 crore films, but that's all perception. How much a producer actually makes, I think there are, in that sense, like cash in hand, I feel like there are very, very few successful producers who actually eventually make enough money on a film.
Yeah.
So to have to deal with that anyway, and then to kind of go through what we're going through, I don't know, honestly. I don't know. um I don't know. I mean, there are so many fears. I'm trying to think about it as we speak. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this, and if you've heard anything, or how you feel this would pan out.
Well, like you said, Deepika, there is no precedent for this. We've never seen this situation before. Um, you know, they're looking at maybe theaters opening in June or July or even later. Hollywood is now clocking dates in September. Um, but even then, are people going to feel safe to come out? And what happens? I wonder, to the smaller film, to those mid-budget movies. If people only come out for the tent poles, does this divide between the mid-level film and the big film become even more? What happens to all the smaller theaters, the smaller theater chains? What does this do to our viewing habits? I don't know. I love the theatrical experience so much that it's frightening to contemplate.
Right, right. And there's this conversation now about some films going only digital and will
Yeah.
not have a theatrical release, and uh, these are unprecedented times, and I don't know.
Yeah, I
I,
don't know. I don't
I
know.
don't think anyone knows.
But tell me, Deepika, what do you think is the role of art at a time like this?
Well, I think I think it's great for people with mental illness. So whether it's watching certain kinds of movies or whether it's music, I think music is therapy for a lot of people. Cooking, stitching, coloring, I think all of those things, um, so for one, you may not even realize it, but it definitely has a positive impact on your mental health. But at the same time, what are people in the arts doing at this point? I don't know. I think some people are just, uh, working out. Some people are cooking. Someone's cleaning. Um, and some people are doing it out of no choice because you don't have help like you probably would under normal circumstances. And then some people are doing it because it's just fun and you don't get to do it otherwise. And yeah.
But
But
you're finding yourself at peace and sort of using this time very productively, which is the name of your Instagram series, How to Be Productive.
I think so. I mean, to be honest, I've always been that person. I'm not a like, oh my, I don't think you'll ever hear me say I'm so bored.
Yeah.
I'm never bored. I'm always thinking of things to do, whether it's in the kitchen, whether it's in the house, whether it's on my phone, whether it's watching something. There's always things that I think of in my head, of things that I can do, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. I'm always thinking of what I can do. So I'm not someone who's ever said, in fact, my mother's always said, like, can you just sit? Ranbir keeps saying it. He's like, can you sit in one place? Can you not like have to do something all the time? And I don't know, because I'm always up to something. I'm always doing something. My mind is always engaged and occupied. He calls it phat phat. He's like, yeah, and then he complains on the family group. He's like, and I sprained my back 2 days ago when I was cleaning. So I sprained my back and then I was bored. So he made sure before he went down to the gym, he said, you're not moving from here. You've sprained your back. And he made a surprise visit in 20 minutes. And I was not in my bed. I was actually up on a shelf trying to clean something. And he got really wild. He's like, can you not do this phat phat all the time? Can you just sit in one place? You've injured your back. So I find it really difficult to just sit in one place and not do anything.
I know. My husband calls me Gileri. You know Gileri?
See?
It's the same
And
thing.
so I think the only time I really sit down is dinner time, when we're having dinner and we actually are watching either a TV series or watching a movie. That's probably the only time at the end of the day I'm like, okay, now I can sit and eat and watch something.
Listen, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing, and
I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. And
this
it's
is,
given me time to reconnect with my home. I mean,
yeah.
not that I'm not aware of this, but I think the last couple of years was just so busy, and you're out all the time, and so whether it's things, I know people make fun of like, oh, she's labeling her groceries or whatever, but it actually, I went into the kitchen yesterday and I cooked up an entire Thai meal, and it was easy for me because I knew exactly what was where. I knew where the dishes were. And that's where I started off from. A lot of people feel like this is the life like I've always lived. Um, but I've worked to get to where I am. I started off moving to Bombay. I lived in a rented apartment. I lived alone. There were days when I'd come back from work and, you didn't have this home delivery as easy as it is today. There were days when I would like order in food. I mean, I had to order in every meal because I didn't know how to cook. I'd come back late at night and eat cold food because I was exhausted from work. I'd literally just take it out of the fridge, eat whatever, half an idli that was left from the morning, cleaned my house, gone to work, come back, done the lot. I've done all of that. So this is easy for me. This is really easy for me, and I enjoy it. I enjoy being around the house and doing stuff.
Well, listen, keep enjoying. I just hope this doesn't last too long, and we get to enjoy more, to see you on screen rather than on Instagram. Deepika, thank you so much. It's always such
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Stay safe.